Hello and welcome back to my channel, In a Journey with Doris. Welcome again to my series on the God universe. In this video, I am going to explain why we have the planets. This is also the last video in this little segment of the commonplace, our Milky Way galaxy. And yes, so stay tuned to it. Right. Let me take... That's a funny noise. Right. Let me take you back to the energy of emotions. I keep saying this in all of my videos. The energy of emotions affects everything. Everything is all about the energy of emotions. And yes, this is true. This is key to everything. The energy of emotions affects literally everything in the universe. And it is so we affect the energy of emotions, and the energy of emotions affects us. So here I've said the higher selves they have developed all kinds of mathematical models to try and learn about the energy of emotions. They have this library of stories of ways to predict what would happen to the energy of emotions, or about themselves, in a bid to learn more about the energy of emotions. And then they decide to build a place for them to interact, the earth, a hotbed of emotions. Just like, so how are they going to manage that? How are they going to manage the emotions that was sure to arise from that? Because remember, they have predicted in their simulations, in their space, that there was going to be clashes and eruptions of emotions. That emotions would for sure affect the actual energy of emotions when you put it out. When you put it out there in the universe. Right. So what do they do? What did they do, and how did they manage that? And I want to talk a little bit about a scientist. So, I mean, before I talk about the scientists, let me just say, in the same way that a scientist want to validate their theories, that is the same way that the higher self want to validate their prediction by having the earth, by having us interact with each other. But in doing that, and as a scientist, when they create their experiment, they like to create it in a controlled environment so as to limit external influences. And similarly, the earth is the same. But how do you limit the way we affect the energy of emotions, or how the energy of emotions affects us? You bring in the 9 planets. So we have, let me stop for a minute. So we have 9 planets in our solar system. Do you remember, let me bring this in. Do you remember this? My rudimentary galaxy shape. I was trying to make it. You can see in the last 2 videos. I'm really talking about the central part now, just our solar system and the sun and this Play-Doh that won't stay in place. Anyway, I'm just bringing this to say I'm really only talking about the sun and our solar system, which is the 9 planets. So I put that away there. And in the solar system, in our solar system, there are 9 planets, right? Yes, Pluto is a planet. And with the exception, none of the other planets are inhabited or fit for habitation. They're not designed for humans to live in, and there are no aliens on there either. There are no aliens on there, right? So we have 9 planets. They all orbit the sun, with the exception of the Earth. All the other planets change direction and speed when they orbit, as they orbit the sun. It is thought, the general current thinking is that all the planets move in the same direction, they have the same constant speed, but that's not the case. The speed, the planetary speeds change. The orbital speed, so their rotational speeds change. The orbital speed around the sun changes as well. Now, there's no point saying how or why do I know this. Might even have been told me. So each planet, excluding the Earth now, look, I've got I've got another prop. Me and my prop, like so. I've got this prop here. The yellow bit is the sun. The blue bit, the little blue ball there, more Play-Doh, is the Earth, right? So each planet has its own individual orbit, but it is also part of a collective orbit. Now there are 2 collective orbital rings. So there is, if we call one of them orbital ring 1 and orbital ring 2, and I've represented them with a purple sort of ring, paper ring, and an orange paper ring. At any one time, each planet is in either, it has its own individual orbit around the sun, but it is also part of a collective orbit, either in the purple orbital ring. I'm calling it purple because I'm using purple paper, but you could call it a collective orbital ring 1, or it will be in orbital ring 2. So each orbital rings has 4 planets, one at the top. So you can see here, I've tried to sort of represent where the planet is. So at any one time, each of the planets are in either orbital ring 1 or orbital ring 2. There are 4 planets per ring, one at the top. I've represented them there. You can't see the orange one. There's definitely one, like I've used a dark dot to show you that there's a planet there, there's a planet there, and there's a planet at the bottom. So in between, where you can see the Earth and the sun, the Earth orbits the sun at its own pace and at its own rotation, and that doesn't change. But for the rest of the planet, they change rotational speed and orbital speed, individually as well as collectively. Now let me explain this collectively thing. So for example, Mars is closest to the sun, right? So Mars orbits the sun at a a faster pace than, say, Pluto at the furthest end, furthest away from the sun. So Mars orbits faster, Pluto slower. If they are in the same orbital ring, Mars would be slowed down, and Pluto, the speed, the orbital speed increase, so that Mars and Pluto are now orbiting the sun in unison. I'm not saying that the speed is exactly the same. What I'm saying is they will be orbiting in unison. So so each planet is in either orbital 1 or orbital 2, and the orbits are moved clockwise, like so, anti-clockwise between each other, like so. This is not mechanical, this is low budget. Anti-clockwise, like so, clockwise, like so, between each other. So the planets are orbiting the sun, and they're in either the purple ring or the orange ring, orbiting clockwise, anti-clockwise, turning upside down as well, and backwards. Can you see that? If I had a fancy machine, I'd probably do that, but I don't know how to do that fancy. So can you see? There is a movement of the planet in unison, collectively, clockwise, anti-clockwise, as well as up and down. Right? This movement, if you remember when we talked about the different areas and segments, of the galaxy, the regions were the same, were the same as the zodiac signs. When the planets are moving in their collective orbits, this is when we say that Pluto is in Capricorn or Libra or something like that, because the planets are moving in those collective orbits. So you can imagine. So what I'm trying to say here is, remember now, I'm talking about the middle of this, the central part of this. And if you're now moving this, going upside down, round and round, clockwise, anti-clockwise with each other, you can see how the planets get to be in different regions at different times of the year, or every 5 years, or every 10 years, whatever. That's why. Okay, so let's put this away. Now, the question then becomes, why and who does this moving? And the answer is the sound man. Consciousness H. The sound man who mapped the stars. Consciousness who mapped all the stars, brought them in place into our galaxy. I was going to, not so much into our galaxy, I meant to say the consciousness that made our galaxy appear in place. Big Bang. That same consciousness, the sound man, is the one that moves the planet. Why? The sound man discovered that when you move the planet, they create a vibration, and the vibration is a sort of noise or a frequency, and this frequency can be converted to counteract the frequency that is generated by us on earth. Does that make sense? So we are on a hotbed of emotion in this earth. There's all kinds of emotions coming up. We love each other, we hate each other, all the time. We fight each other and so on and so forth. All of that can affect the energy of emotions, the actual energy of emotions. But if that happens, then the higher selves, the data that the higher selves are trying to collect for themselves might not be true or as indicative as it should be, therefore limiting their knowledge somewhat. And if they limit their knowledge, then evolution would be slowed, stopped. If a scientist doesn't have a controlled experiment, then you have to take into account the external influences on that. So to account for the external impact of the energy of emotions, the sound man uses the planets to balance out the frequency that's generated by us on earth, which is why, look, my earth is moved again. I've been trying to keep this in place. Come on, my earth is moved again. And this noise, so by changing the speed, the orbital speed and the rotational speed, and having them in these two rings, is sort of like managing them as like musical, and it creates different noise. So it balances it, so it's always balancing out is it the frequency? Always balances out the frequency of the emotions that we are generating. Right, the frequency of the energy that we are generating here on earth. So the sound, and the reason I love this so much that I called it musical planet. So he's using the planets, changing the speed, to balance out what we do here on earth. So when that happened, when the sound man discovered that the planets could be used to balance out the energies coming from the earth, and the earth and the galaxy was put in place and it was tested, obviously, when that happened, the fifth evolution happened. The fifth evolution of the earth occurred. It was courtesy of the sound man. So just to recap the other evolutions, I don't know if I mentioned this before in my other videos, but they have only been 5 evolutions in the universe so far. The first one, let me have a look. The first one happened when the God universe, when the first consciousness A, made a copy of himself and created consciousness B. And I said several subsequent copies later, there was no more evolution. After that first one, there was an evolution. The second one was when the higher selves, or the other consciousnesses discovered the use of multiple planes. I talked about this in my multiple planes video. The third one is the inner being, creating the inner being. I said there was in my drawbacks and solutions video, I said that the solution was creating the inner being a commonplace. When that solution came about, there was evolution. The fourth one was consciousness integrating into the human self. Discovered how to do that, evolution. And finally, the fifth one, musical planet. 5 evolutions so far. I don't know if I said this in my other videos, but consciousness has been around, the earlier consciousness has been around for 4 billion years, but the Earth and our galaxy has really only been around for 54,000 years. 54,000 years. Still, it's long, isn't it? But yeah, me personally, I found this whole thing mind-blowing. I love the idea of being looked after by such a powerful consciousness. I love the idea of the musical planets. I found it just incredibly intriguing and mind-blowing. So yes, I hope you enjoyed this video. This is the end of this video. In my next video, I will be talking more about what the higher selves, why the higher self want to experience life on Earth. So thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.